Curious if the mic is still doing stuff on the waiting screen. Yeah, it's picking up audio still.
What the fuck? So I don't have any other mics plugged in.
Yeah, it's still... All right, so it sounds like the mic is still going through on the waiting screen. That's probably a bad sign. Hopefully,
Is it a new stream link?
the audio sounds okay to me now, though.
That's good.
I think the audio is fixed. Yeah, Calcium said it's fixed.
Sick.
Yeah, I'm chalking this up to a Streamlabs bug, guys. Like, there should be no audio coming through on the starting soon screen. All I did was reset the app, and that part is fixed now. But whatever. Thanks for bearing with us, guys. Eric, did you drop the new link?
No, I never got the new link. Where is the new link?
It's on YouTube. It's on the YouTubes. I'll get it.
I think I'm watching the old link.
Yeah, you probably are. So I'll drop the new link in the Discord, guys, and for everybody on the Twitters. I don't know. Hopefully they find us. I love live podcasting. It's the best.
At least we know we can fix it before recording a 2-hour episode.
Well, that was fun. Happy New Year, everybody. First episode of the year. It's good to be back. Had a little, we had some bugs. We were switching over to a new YouTube, and for some reason, Streamlabs just decided it doesn't like us today. What up to everybody in the chat? I see Edmund, I see Enpar, I see Sean, and Calcium, of course. I think the chat definitely took a little hit here. Have a much smaller audience at the moment. Hopefully, people find us.
Give the video a like.
Yes. Give the video a like, please. Please, don't make me beg. Like the video. Reminder, we are on our new YouTube now. If you are listening to the audio of this, which is going to still be on the Alfalfa feed for a bit. But we have a new Irresponsibly Long YouTube that we're now publishing the episodes to. I think that's youtube.com at Irresponsibly Long Pod. Please go subscribe there if you are not already. Anywho, Happy New Year, Christopher. Happy New Year, Dekoch. What's up? Big week. I mean, we didn't do an episode last week. Obviously, it was Christmas time, but I felt bad because it was kind of a bit of a chaotic time in the markets, you know. And this week has been no different thus far. We had a major Nuketown there to open the year after a crazy pre-New Year's run-up when futures opened on Monday. Were you watching that on New Year's?
Bitcoin futures? No, I took the whole 1st of January to just be hungover as fuck.
This is New Year's Eve.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think. Yeah, New Year's Eve, I believe, was when this happened. Or maybe it was New Year's. I forget. I think it was New Year's Eve when futures opened. Yeah, it was crazy. The CME futures were trading at like a $2,500 premium to spot at one point. I saw a spot price at like 4,400 and then the futures were like 4,600. I was like, what's going on? It started turbo pumping. I got served. You know, I was short. I was hedged. I knew we were gonna dump, and they fucking squeezed me on the weekend. They did the old weekend holiday.
Oh man.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I mean, once my invalidation point hit, I just did the old reverse button and went like mega long and probably got like 25% of the hedge losses back on that one trade. But then Bitcoin did the old kind of break above the range high, deviate back in, and then that was all she wrote. We sort of dumped from there. I got off a little bit of a short on ETH before we dumped, but yeah, it was kind of disappointing. That would have been probably my largest trade of all time.
Whoa.
Yeah, I had a very large position on that. Probably too large because I got squeezed out of it. So, you know, market's a bitch sometimes, man. It's hard.
Well, you know, I don't know where you want to take this, but I thought that we had a pretty clear vision, like going into the end of the year, into the new year, which was like sort of profit taking was inevitable. That seemed to happen on a lot of the names that we were in that we've been talking about. Coinbase, Bitcoin miners, like those all pulled back like 20, 30%.
Yeah, I don't know if I would call it a pullback. I mean, these things, like coin was down double digits to start the year.
Like days in a row. Yeah.
Yeah, rough start to the year for our beloved Coinbase. I think it's an interesting debate. Like what people were talking about, is this sort of just people pressing the sell button on you know the first day of the trading year to defer taxes, or is there something more nefarious going on there? And then we had the BTC ETF denial FUD from Jihan Wu's sketchy research company or whatever.
Yeah, what the fuck was that?
So I mean, I was looking into this, right? And there was basically some. It's like it's crazy how this keeps happening in crypto. There's just some like unsighted analyst publishes a thing, and then the market nukes like just 2 billion in liquidations, mega nuke. I'm not so sure this is what caused it though. Like this was published, I think, the day before the actual nuke happened. Sometimes people are just out over their skis, man. Like we've been talking about funding just through the roof. I was telling you I was getting paid like 70% to be short, which is pretty
That's insane. That's insane. That's an annualized rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's still insane. I mean, and being short was profitable anyways.
Yeah, but we wiped hard. Like I said, 2 billion in liquidations. That was probably a lot of people's first experience with a liquidation cascade. Welcome to crypto, guys. That was nothing. I suspect we'll have even worse ones after that. I think now everybody's kind of question is once again turning to the ETF. What do I do? Is this a dip for buying? Or is this sort of like the first warning shot? You know, like the Coinbase breakdown, the miner sell off. This is smart money.
Okay.
Exiting.
This was exactly my question. Like, was that the dip and now we resume up only, or like is the dip still coming? And we can get into that.
It's a great question. It's not a question I have a hard answer to right now. I'm actually a little confused myself. Market's pretty unclear to me right now. I'm kind of following through with my original plan, which was to I hedged coin. I took profits on that BTC miner trade, like at the local top thus far. Probably going to scale back into that at some point soon. We'll talk about that. But yeah, I had a tricky week because one of the things I did in preparation for the dump was to take profits on my rather large Arbitrum position. I was pretty bullish.
Congrats, sir.
Well,
profits are good.
Profits are good, but when if I told you that Ethereum and Bitcoin were going to nuke and then Arbitrum was just going to pump 12%,
yeah, I wouldn't believe it.
I would have told you. You were crazy. So yeah, I missed the last stage of that move. I haven't checked charts in a bit. It looks like we're actually selling off a little bit.
Arbitrum chart now. I'm going to the chart.
You want chart time?
Wow.
Yeah, Arbitrum, when you pull it up on the weekly, it just 3 very strong weeks. Basically, we've doubled in like under 3 weeks. Pretty remarkable move up to 212. Arbitrum and Optimism are both kind of blue sky charts right now, just at sitting above all-time highs. These are the coins right now, in my opinion. Like if you're still bullish and you sort of think it's the time of Ethereum, Arbitrum, Optimism. What could be an interesting play is Matic hasn't really done anything yet. Chart doesn't look as good, right? It's got a past. It's one of these charts that has a history. You want to love the coin, but you know where it's been.
Yeah,
it's hurt some people, and those people.
I don't really
those
love
people
this.
want to sell.
I kind of want to like when it's bull time for ETH. I kind of want to hold ETH, but I'm in on Optimism, Arbitrum, Lido.
Ugh. Yeah, I have a lot to say about this, actually. I want to get into it a little later. I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a sort of 2023 recap first.
Let's recap.
Kind of take us into 2024. Just wanted to take a deep breath, get bearings. I feel like I've been storming the beaches in Normandy all week. I have been up at 4 a.m. just trading perps. I'm in 7 or 8 positions. I'm juggling. I'm trading the 1 minute, and I'm trading the daily. It's been a complete shit show.
Well, let's get a little perspective. Sometimes it's good to zoom out, right?
Yeah.
So 2023 happened, and I don't know if you wanted to lead this, but from my perspective, it was obviously the start of a bull run.
Let's take it to pre-2023. Let's set the stage. It was December, and most everybody was expecting a very bad year, especially in TradFi. There were, people who were kind of constructively bullish on crypto, for sure. And I would say the very end of the year, I had a bit of a come to Jesus moment. But when we recorded our Alpha predictions episode in December, earlier in December, pre-Christmas, I was feeling dark, man. And it wasn't good. But obviously the year did not turn out like that at all. It just blew everybody out of the water, myself included. Unfortunately, if you were an ETH holder, you basically underperformed everything. But that's another story. What do you think was the biggest surprise last year to you?
Well, before we get into surprises, I think the way that I even perceived the year, right? It was a year of you had to pick the right ones, We talked about this, I think, yesterday, but the S&P 500 minus the Magnificent Seven was basically flat on the year all the way to November 1st. And then sort of the last 2 months of the year, everything mooned. Everything did. But up until November, it was like Bitcoin was going, and then like large cap tech was going, but you couldn't just like own the market.
Is that true though? Because stock pickers got wrecked last year, right? Like every stock picker got annihilated unless they just only picked
Yeah.
one of those 7 stocks, which people didn't do because amongst stock pickers,
Not
there was
the
this
pros.
idea that like, big tech is done. That was like a low interest rate era thing. And in the era of higher interest rates and higher for longer, we're going to have the return of like quote unquote value. Like all that stuff ended up being like nonsense. And in spite of how much the Mag 7 sort of outperformed everything else, at the same time, if you just bought and held the index, you definitely outperformed all of the stock pickers. So it's kind of like a little bit of a, like both things are true.
I mean, up until November 1st. I mean, that's the bifurcation though.
Mm-hmm.
It's like up until November 1st, if you held the S&P, it was only because the Mag 7 was dragging you. And then from November 1st to the end of the year, it was everything
we
goes.
can cherry pick our dates, the year is the year.
Yeah, but I think it's important to note that it's not like everything has been mooning. Like a lot of things have been lagging. And I expect that trend to continue going forward where you have to like make the right choices.
What do you think the right choices are going to be?
Well, that I'm constantly of several minds, but my mind right now is it's either like continuation or it's mean reversion. Continuation means what was working continues to work, or you see the laggards catch up, and it's 4 days into the year or whatever. It's like we're very early in the year, and what we've seen is the Mag 7 has turned into the Lag 7, and like the laggards have been catching up, and that's not true in crypto. I mean, crypto probably everything's just going.
Yeah, I mean it's a mixed bag in crypto. Like Solana's been terrible for the last few weeks, but it also arguably the best performer for your money all year. But you have stuff like Celestia that is it just goes up and just keeps going up and doesn't look like it wants to do anything other than go up. So definitely a mixed bag in crypto. And then you've got ETH, which hasn't really mean reverted yet, and just kind of continues to lag behind. But you've seen the catch-up trade start to have in the ETH ecosystem, which has been kind of the trade of the last few weeks. Like if you've been long Arbitrum, if you've been long Optimism. Optimism was a silent killer for a while. Like there was a solid like 2 or 3 month stretch where Optimism was like literally the exact same performance as Solana, except nobody was talking about it, which is a much better coin to be in.
Right, and at the time, Arbitrum hadn't been performing either, right? It was like Optimism.
Arbitrum has been lagging Optimism very hard for basically the entirety of its existence. Like I actually took a trade earlier this year, which was like an Arbitrum Optimism sort of relative value pair trade. And it worked really, really well, and Arbitrum did well on that trade for me. And then after that, it's basically underperformed for the entirety of OP's existence for the most part. But now it's sort of having its revenge rally. Been like one of the maybe the the strongest coin from like a risk reward perspective. I mean, because it's multi-billion-dollar. It's probably what $2 or $3 billion market cap coin. It's not like a $40 million shit coin. So to have that kind of like continued performance like day in and day out for multiple weeks from a large cap like that is pretty exciting. Pretty nice to see. Yeah, I mean, back to 2023. I mean, I feel like I got a lot of battle scars for sure in 2022, and 2023 was kind of the same thing. 2022 was just, it was like bloody. It's like you knew you were just like in a war and you were just trying to survive. And then 2023, you had a lot of like, it was a roller coaster. There's a lot of like, what is happening right now? Like, wait, where am I? Like, am I still in survival mode, or is the sun rising? And there was a lot of like humbling moments for me where like I kind of like had to just take a step back and reassess some things that I was thinking that were definitely not so, and kind of reorient the plane versus the year before, which is just like down, 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 and you're just selling bounces, selling bounces, selling bounces. Now you're like, am I accumulating now? Is this like, should I be buying alts here? You know, am I range trading still, or am I like in the early stages of just kind of like longing a major like multi-year uptrend? It's a super confusing time, and some people are still bearish, I guess.
Like one of those people is me.
Yeah.
I'm bearish. But I'm bearish on a very short-term time horizon. And I don't know if we want to get in. I don't know if you got enough of 2023 out of your system.
I mean, I have a couple thoughts on 2023 that I think kind of lead into 2024. Maybe I'll just sort of condense it, I guess, to like the biggest stuff, so that we don't go like too deep in the weeds here. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and then there's been sort of like sub narratives that have spawned from that. But Bitcoin surprised at a lot of narratives, right? Last year you saw the rise of ordinals and sustainable, perhaps fee markets on Bitcoin, and that I think really, pulled one of the legs out from Ethereum's stool, right? There was this question of like, is this really that good of a chain? Like, if we're just like hoping there's fees in the future as the mining reward keeps getting cut in half, is this actually sustainable? And now we're at a point today where for, many of the, I don't know how many days in a row it's been, but Bitcoin has been generating more fees than Ethereum, which is just like unheard of in the last bull. So
You know who that's good for? Miners.
Yes. Put a pin in that. On the other side of Ethereum, right, you had obviously like the survival and the resurgence of Solana. And there's some related narrative, like we've seen like a resurgence of Atom and the ecosystem there. And although like I continue to question why the Atom token exists, some of the coins that are a part of that ecosystem, you've got like Osmo, you've got obviously Celestia, Injective. Like these have been like Injective, Celestia, and Osmo are just, they're freaking rocket ships. I only own one of them, unfortunately, but stuff there is pumping. Like all of this like stuff that is basically like not Ethereum base layer is kind of sending, and then Ethereum is sort of not. So that those to me were like some of the big narrative shifts. And I don't know, like I've definitely been questioning coming into the end of this year whether like we've sort of hit like peak ETH maxi. ETH had its like it's having its sort of 2020 Bitcoin moment, which basically, for those of you who were around last cycle, there was this sort of brief time towards the start of the cycle where like Bitcoin ripped, and it was like, bow down, you peasants. But then it just did nothing. And then if you held anything else, you mega outperformed. And I think Bitcoin was like an enormous disappointment last cycle. Yeah, you had Sailor buying it, I guess, but it was, you had the horrible like carry trade with Barry and Three Arrows and the whole gang blowing up the whole crypto ecosystem. There were no fees on it yet. Like people were using Tron on Tether. Like it was really in this weird spot, and it was weird enough for me to just sell all of it. I was like, why do I own Bitcoin?
That was a bold move by you, because you were a Bitcoin maxi prior to DeFi summer, I guess.
Yeah, and then I used DeFi on Ethereum, and I saw Aave, I saw Uniswap, I saw Maker, and I was like, oh wow, there's something here.
Okay, so let me pause you right there. Right now, price is kind of creating narratives, and maybe it always happens like this. But my question to you is, are you, as you interact with Solana ecosystem or the Cosmos ecosystem, is there anything right now that's like catching your eye to the same degree that like DeFi on Ethereum did, when you're like, holy shit, let me like pivot out of my previous thesis?
No. In short, it's much more analogous to me using. There was a point in time last cycle where I used like Binance Chain for the first time, and I was doing a lot of farming, and everybody was like, all these other L1s are stupid. People were justifying why the fees were good and why people were going to pay the fee. And the fees were so bad at the time. Like, people think fees are bad now. Like, we were paying like thousands of dollars to just mint an NFT and like $180 to do like a swap on Uniswap.
I remember the first time you sort of like ushered me into DeFi. I was like LPing on Sushi, which was like brand new at the time. And I remember paying like $900 just to like get into the position. And I was like, did I do this wrong?
And you're not exaggerating. There was all these kind of tokens and you'd be farming, you like Badger coin or whatever. And yeah, like I would wake up and be like, I'm going to now pay $780 in gas. And I did it because I was about to claim $3,000 in tokens. And I'm like, well, that's just the cost of doing business. And then another $200 to swap them, and you had a couple grand left over, and you're like, well, I'm kind of weird, but all right, I'm like up. But then when I used Binance Chain, I was like, oh, this is going to be a thing. So I bought PancakeSwap, which was like the coin of Binance Chain. Did like a 20x on it, sold it all.
Was that like
did like another like 100x after?
Was that Uniswap on Binance essentially?
Yeah, and then started farming there. Kind of realized there was going to be farming on everything, and then that just triggered this year of like, oh, okay, I'm farming on Polygon, I'm gonna farm on Phantom, I'm farming on Avalanche, I'm farming on Solana. It was just like hop all the way around. So using Solana right now is just like I'm just doing the same thing I already did. Like I already had this impression of Solana when I used it last cycle. I was like, oh, things are like kind of fast, and I do think a lot of apps on there are designed well, and there just seems to be like a bit of a different developer ethos in a way that they build stuff. But like nothing there is different right now that I see. It's just Ethereum but cheaper. We already have Ethereum but cheaper, and Ethereum also has Ethereum but cheaper. And the counter to that is somebody's going to say like, okay, but yeah, Arbitrum is like 3 cents to do a transaction when this is good, and like you say people won't care, which is true, but there's going to be these other use cases where when they're doing tens of thousands of transactions, the difference between 3 cents and like a 100th of a cent or whatever is going to be like a big difference. And like, yeah, I agree, but that's all still speculative.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And we talked about this maybe a couple episodes ago on Irresponsibly Long, where you were showing me, like the swap protocol on Solana, Jupiter, where you can like set limit orders, you can like auto DCA and stuff. And I was like, those are very cool features. But to me, these are all still more similar than different. Like these are sort of the same thing, just like slightly nuanced versions of each other.
And like I could point to something like the next version of Uniswap. Is it Uniswap X? Uniswap 4?
Yeah, they're on V4 now.
4, I don't know. But like that's going to have like these hooks where you can kind of plug in like these additional features, like you can make like a TWAP pool or whatever. And I think you're going to be able to do these sort of gasless transactions and everything. Like, so, and obviously it exists on layer 2s, and we're working on kind of making that liquidity more interoperable. So although Jupiter is nice and I really do enjoy using it, and everybody should use it as much as possible on as many wallets as possible. Like you definitely should be using Solana and using like MarginFi and like using Tensor and using Jupiter. And you should be on Cosmos and just with everything you should be staking it is going to be like a super airdrop bonanza thing. So you definitely should use all these things. I'm not trying to poo-poo that at all. I'm just trying to pull people back a little bit on the like. I feel like I'm being gaslit to an extent because like to me this is cheaper and faster thing is just a thing it's like the third cycle like I've heard this right from the 28th different place, right? So I'm like, do these people just not know? Or and I think a lot of them actually don't know. I think a lot of people are just new. It's like a new narrative to them. They're like, oh, that's the thing. But it's far more complicated than that.
Yeah, I like this whole early cycle where you're doing all this stuff, trying to airdrop farm and all this stuff. Like I remember last cycle I was really into that and everything, and now I'm like I can't even be bothered, like, because I'm trying to think of the bigger picture. Like, where does this stuff actually create some product market fit where this stuff becomes usable? And I don't really get excited about playing the same stupid game again, where we know how it ends. Like, it's fucking useless.
Yeah. And you are not really holding anything other than Ethereum and Bitcoin, basically, right? Like, you don't have...
I mean, like, yeah, those are the material things that I hold. And, like, I think it's important to note that, like, I'm looking at a universe of investments, meaning, like, the entire investable universe. And, of course, there are things that are further out in the risk curve that can generate higher returns. But, like, you know, I was buying ETHE just in, like, TradFi accounts over the last year.
The grayscale
Ethereum, and like that shit fucking flew, dude. It's like that's up, I don't know, like 170% or something. Like,
yeah, arguably a large reason Ethereum isn't pumping, by the way. Like, it is worth noting that narratives follow price, not the other way around. If anybody doesn't believe that, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I just firmly believe that is like a given. And it is absolutely true. But ETH price hasn't gone up, so people are just, you know, making up reasons why it hasn't gone up. Oh, the market's decided that the ETH vision is no good, and it's, you know, capital is going to Solana and all these other things, right? And maybe that's true. Also, like, you've had a lot of, I think, smart money pour into TradFi products, right? We saw a run up in MicroStrategy, we saw a run up in Bitcoin miners, saw a run up in Coinbase, and then the ETH equivalent to that is, you know, it's partially reflected in those, but like especially like Grayscale ETH, and there's a big discount there. So you had a lot of money going into that might have otherwise gone into spot ETH and didn't, right? And then simultaneously you have Celsius just dumping on us for weeks on end.
Yeah, their spot ETH, right? They're just dumping that.
Yeah, right. Sorry if I seem a little distracted. There's large red numbers flashing on my screen. I'm like, wait, what? Like, what is happening?
So much red in that right-hand column.
I'm just like, should I be looking at
you
something?
Can't have charts in front of you while you do a podcast.
No, it's a bad idea. Oh, I forgot to put a stop loss on my bonk long. Well, at least we hit a couple take profit targets. All right, well, occupational hazard of doing this, I guess. But yeah, what I meant to say is that I think a lot of those things that have been holding ETH back, right? Like, one, people played Bitcoin first. Two, a lot of money went into Grayscale ETH. Three, Celsius dumping. Four, I would say seasonality. It's just been a seasonally bad time of year. It always is for Ethereum. Like, the confluence of all these things might be that, like, well, like, nothing is actually wrong. Ethereum's fine. Ethereum ecosystem is fine. That's definitely reflected in the performance of things like Optimism and Arbitrum and Lido recently. So, yeah, people might be overthinking it. And although I, you know, like I said, I am sort of adjusting my thesis a little bit. Like, I don't think it's prudent to just be like 100% ETH and just log off.
Okay, so let's look forward now. Let's look forward to the new year. And you had previously mentioned that you're looking forward to ETHuary. January is ETH's month.
Yes.
And if ETHuary does not perform like it had previously, then you would actually change your thesis.
Yeah, like if crypto doesn't get wrecked in January, and
okay,
ETH just doesn't do anything.
So that's sort of where I was leading with this, because I actually, like, I'm pretty bearish January entirely, sort of all assets, crypto included.
Why? Not saying I disagree, but
yeah.
But why?
So my thought here is it's like a mosaic. There's many pieces, but the main one, like the simple one, is just that the year ended so bullishly,
Mm-hmm.
And like, if you look at like Coinbase, for instance, what do we have? Like 9 straight green candles,
Yeah.
and you're sort of due for a pullback. You have sort of that year-end profit taking. At the same time, you have a new year where it seems like things are shifting a little bit. When I mentioned like continuation versus mean reversion, I see that shift taking place already. Add on like Chem Carson's take, where he's like, well, the flows were all bullish to like through early January, and then mid-January it flips. That's scary. This all kind of then you have the Bitcoin ETF, which I'm pretty confident is going to be a sell the news event, because we're not going to have the structural flows to support higher Bitcoin price. So like all of these things just feel like confluence to me, where I just want to be near term bearish, even though in the long term I'm still very bullish. Like I haven't sold any of my leap calls on any of this stuff. Like I'm still holding that because I believe in it. But just in the very near term, I don't feel like I basically just feel like we're due for a pullback.
Yeah, it's super reasonable. Scariest thing to me right now is the dollar, just from like a charting perspective.
Can I pull the dollar chart?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the dollar chart, and like this is something people who have been following me have seen for a while. One of the reasons I got long over the summer was because I was like, hey, the dollar is kind of basically like traded up into this like very high time frame level, like a monthly fair value gap, if you will, right? Basically, the dollar has gone from monthly gap to monthly gap. That's where it's ranged this year. So the huge move up in 2022 left a gap to the upside, which was summarily filled recently. And then the topping of the dollar left a gap to the downside. These gaps are very, very frequently retested. They're sort of like untapped sources of supply and demand. And typically you go from one gap to another, right? And like in this instance, like we hit a monthly fair value gap to the downside. It propelled us to a monthly fair value gap to the upside. And that trade happened very nicely. But now the question is sort of like, okay, but are we going lower now? Or was that initial move up just like sort of like the first leg? And the thing that scares me is that there's definitely a potential for the dollar to go to like 111, 112 this year. It's something people aren't talking about. There's sort of two scenarios that I think are ultimately bullish for us, right? One is that the dollar actually just rolls over here and goes lower, and there's no pain, and it just goes into the 80s, and we just print money, right? There's another less painful scenario where we sort of retrace into the 104, 105 area. This is you'll know this as a BPR for you technicians out there. It's like an interesting formation you get when price gaps up and then immediately gaps back down. So that's what happened on the monthly this year. So that area is frequently an area that's sort of retested, but then acts as like support or resistance. So most likely scenario for this year, I think, is that we do get a rally in the dollar to start the year. We kind of go into this like 105 zone. People start to freak out a little bit, but that's it. And then we kind of resume up only. I think that's my base case. There is a chance that we flip that zone. It doesn't act as resistance. And if that happens, that's scary, because that means you probably are going to a $1.11, $1.12, which is kind of like chaos crisis levels, right? Like that was, we peaked at like near like, I think like a 115 or something in 2022, and we remember what that peak was like. Like it was it was pretty gnarly. So that's the thing I was kind of cautious on coming into the end of the year. Like again, like I had this level marked out on the chart for a long time, this sort of zone around like 100 or so, from from like basically 99 to 101.5 on the dollar. That was an area where I was watching for a bounce because it's a high time frame level, like a very important high time frame level. And we did get a bounce this week, like a significant bounce. So was the sell-off Monday a tax thing, or was the sell-off the dollar? Like, is the market kind of starting to go risk off? That's the thing I'm concerned about. And on the 4-hour chart, we just kind of didn't quite get a structure break. Actually, we did get a little bit of a structure. Yeah, so the 4-hour is actually kind of showing a structure break to the upside. So I don't know. If we get a retrace here on the dollar in the coming days, it's probably a good chance to de-risk, because there's going to be this sense that like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. The ETF's coming. That was a nasty sell-off, but everything's okay. But often these things kind of have like a part 2, part 3 to them. Maybe that's what's starting to happen right now as we record this. Hopefully not.
Yeah, I hope not. But that kind of lines up with the way I'm thinking about the market too. So I also like to zoom out. So I'm of the opinion still that crypto is a high beta risk asset. So it's going to go sort of the way that NASDAQ goes, just to a higher degree probably. And I don't think that's going to change. And when I look at broad markets, like from a very high level perspective, I want to see things like, how often do these like bear markets occur generally? The S&P 500, for instance, averages like a 20% correction once every 4 years. We had two of those over the last 3 years. We had the NASDAQ pull back 38% during that bear market. Like that to me kind of feels like the move happened. Like that correction, that bear market happened. There's a lot of doom out there, a lot of doomers who believe like, well, when the recession hits, it's all over. I kind of feel like we just priced that in already. Like we had that, and markets are going to go higher. But it doesn't go higher in a straight line. Yeah.
It does not. This is an interesting chart. This is the BTC versus the NASDAQ. Couple triangle things and a couple breakouts. Another breakout here. This to me looks like it just wants to go way up. I think this is like an interesting level actually on the chart here around the 3. It's kind of like a range high. That would probably actually coordinate pretty well with Bitcoin running like that 48K high, which for me was kind of the real cautionary. Like I really wanted to sell above there. I would have felt a lot better selling there because I still think we go there. Like I think probably relatively soon.
We're gonna get there on the ETF launch. We're gonna get to that 48K level, and then it's gonna pull back.
We're like shaking out people before the ETF, and then like ETF launches and we go up, and everybody's like fuck, and then they buy back in, but then they get wrecked.
That's my thesis.
Pretty plausible.
And that's my thought. Like when people are trying to buy back into Coinbase and the miners right now, I'm like, in my opinion, I'm like, you haven't given it enough time.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that. I mean, I definitely nibbled. I actually kind of more than nibbled today. I put like half of my cash back to work that I had.
But I think
in the miners.
You're going to be okay anyways, because like ultimately this year is going to be very bullish.
Well, I rolled them to a longer date. Like I initially had like March calls, took profit on all of them, and then I took probably like half's aggressive, but I took like about a third of the cash I generated from the Coinbase hedge and the miners sell, and I put that back to work in leaps. So not as concerned about these kind of short-term wiggles. On the topic of that, like I'm really expecting this to be like a super gnarly year. Like I'm skeptical it's going to be as easy as people think. I think it might be as bullish as people think, but I am worried it's really going to test people. And I kind of feel like if you're like a bit of a non-professional, the best play isn't to go in and out and in and out and in and out. It's to do what I was suggesting like before the end of the year, just sell some stuff. Like I think sitting on 20 or 30% of your portfolio in cash all of the time, like your crypto portfolio, is really, really nice in bull markets because you can usually yield like 15, 20, 25% on that cash when things get really, really frothy. So that's nice. And then you have the optionality to buy stuff when it goes down, which you can't do if you're fully allocated, right? And that also gives you like a nice little psychological buffer, right? Even though like you're kind of getting wrecked, you're like, ooh boy, cheap coins, and that saves you a bit. Like when you're all in, you feel like you don't have a life raft, and you're just kind of out to sea, hoping the tide sweeps you back into the beach. You know.
I agree with you. Can I ask you how you what vehicle you chose, or like mechanically how you chose to hedge your Coinbase position?
Yeah, I sold just some deep in the money covered call. Like I think when Coinbase was like 177 or so, like I think I sold 165 calls for end of January. So those obviously paid like a really fat, so there's just like, fat chunk of cash just
right
in your brokerage account. It's kind of an interesting play because you can end up winning, keeping all of the money, and then prices back where you started at. You could also make an argument just for shorting the stock, but like I don't know, like I felt sometimes price goes into these levels that I think are going to be difficult for us to get through, and I like selling the options because it doesn't necessarily even have to go down. It just has to struggle at that level for a few more weeks, and then I make money.
Right, and you got the benefit of the option premiums being very high. Like it was a period of like really high implied volatility.
Yeah, I got a lot for them. Yeah, and then I when we broke structure on the hourly chart, I also added I had a bear call spread. So
yeah, I was doing something similar. I was selling calls a little out of the money. So I collected less premium, but I collected premium and then bought puts with that premium. And I did great on the Coinbase ones, but on the miners, the implied volatility was so high that like the puts that I bought didn't actually pay when it actually hit there. Like I bought 24 strike puts on Mara, it went to 24, and I'm like, wait, how come I'm not making any money here?
It's like a bit of a mind fuck for people because people think, oh, I'm bearish, so I buy puts. They think calls are bullish. But when volatility is like insanely high, it's oftentimes the better play to sell the calls. Not necessarily naked, but again, you do like a bear call spread. So you sell like maybe a contract that's like at the money, and then buy one that's sort of out of the money, so that your risk is capped.
You protect your downside,
and your brokerage account lets you play with your money and doesn't just your broker doesn't like you just being completely naked on options. It's bad for a number of reasons. But that's like an interesting way to express bearishness when volatility is high. So that's basically what I did here. I didn't hedge with puts. I just sold calls. So mostly like a delta play because I was thinking about price direction, but it's like kind of an added bonus if vol is really high and then vol collapses, because that's like an additional thing you collect.
Yeah.
How are you going to adjust this in the future? What's the main lesson here?
Well, I think so. It depends on what you hold initially, right? Because you hold a lot of Coinbase common stock, and I hold the leaps. And same with like the miners. Like on the miners particularly, it became very obvious to me that I should have just shorted the common stock, held onto my leaps instead of buying puts, because the implied volatility was so high. I mean, I could just delta hedge it directly by shorting the common. And I think that was cool. It was cool.
Yeah.
experience to get.
Trade the thing you want, not a proxy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happens to the best of us. Anyway, let's look forward a little bit. Let's do some 2024 ideas. You said that you are bearish for now, but you're bullish like me. I don't think you're as bullish as me. I think I was saying like 6,000 on the S&P. I think is in the cards for this year. And I think crypto goes way up eventually. I've just sort of seen too many of these movies for me to be like, oh yeah, this is it. Like it never dumps when it always dumps when people are like euphoric. It's never like, oh God, I'm bearish, and then like it just like it rugs you out of nowhere. Like we saw multiple examples of that this year already. People were super bullish in the spring. Remember?
Yeah, like here's something that I'm having trouble reconciling in my brain is that, you and I, we understand all these markets, but we're hyper focused on like the far end of the risk curve.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's hard for me to even conceptualize that like there are a lot of people out there who are still very bearish. I think Nick was giving us some data about how many people are like over allocated to bonds, like long bonds still. And that to me was shocking because there just must be so many people that are still sidelined.
Yeah. A lot of money still just in money markets. Does that pour out when rates go down? Maybe. There's a lot of people I think who are about to get really rich from housing. Like I said, I think rates drop and housing goes way up and people get richer and buy more assets, which makes assets go up, which makes people get richer, which makes like people.
You get this wealth effect.
Yeah, there's this like reflexivity that exists in TradFi the same way it exists in crypto, and it's hard predicting this because it's not a high. It shouldn't be a high probability event that we get like a mega melt up, right? Like there should be like inherently like a low probability prediction, and I'm not even saying like I think it's like 50%, but I think it's a really high probability. Like I think it's a much higher probability that we just enter into some freaking crazy feedback loop than people are still at this moment sort of pricing in. And like although we may get like kind of the first shakeout, I really do think it's just going to be a shakeout, and it's going to present a lot of opportunity. So I'm trying to think now, okay, like what am I going to do in Q1 if we get the shakeout? Like how am I preparing for it? What do I really want to buy?
So here's like the struggle that I have right now is just on the S&P, because I agree with you that housing prices are going to soar. I think crypto prices are going to soar. When the S&P goes to 6K, it has to be driven there by an aggregation of prices rising, and I'm wondering which prices rise. And when 50% of the index is made up of seven stocks that are already incredibly richly valued, like Amazon trading 80 times earnings, the aggregate value is 55 times earnings. Like that's very high in historical norms. Like if those aren't the ones that are driving it to 6K, then it has to be a rotation. Like it can be other stocks, but that to me is the one part that I'm like really struggling to grasp is like how does the S&P go much higher? Meanwhile, crypto, that makes sense to me. Crypto's still trading 50% of its previous all-time high. S&P's already there.
AI, bro.
yeah, I guess.
Two words, AI.
Yeah, it could be those two words.
I mean, obviously that's something people are talking about. I do think that's going to be a thing next year, though. It's definitely going to be a thing. I kind of feel like people are still underappreciating what the actual impact of it is going to be. I mean, I sort of agree with this like, oh, stocks are quote unquote expensive thing. I think there's a lot of reasons why they could become not expensive very, very quickly. Like if rates go down, or if like we were talking about, I don't want to get like too in the weeds on this, but if we were talking about like, we were talking last episode about this idea that the risk-free rate is actually much higher already than the market actually is pricing in, and so it's actually like the market looks expensive because it's a discounting to the sort of like the wrong rate, a rate that is better reflected by the mortgage market. And then when the market sort of comes to that realization and those things converge, well, stocks actually look less expensive. They actually start looking cheap, and then we've talked about all the money and reverse repo, and like we haven't even really had AI mania yet. Like all of this confluence of stuff, I think could kind of, oh, and by the way, there's an election next year where, you know, one of the parties has basically demonstrated that the other person is like the spawn of Satan, and they're literally willing to do anything to have him not win because we have to save democracy or whatever, right? They will literally do anything at this point. Like, they've run him through like 100 freaking criminal prosecution. Like, you don't think they're gonna tweak interest rates or do something sketchy like with what they did with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? Or like there's so many like levers I think that they can pull. Like Janet still runs the Treasury. I don't know. There's just so many reasons I think to be longer term optimistic.
Absolutely, I agree. Longer term,
but we're beating around the bush. Like what does the best next year? Like what does the best? Let's talk about crypto specifically.
Yeah.
What narratives we think are actually going to take hold next year, and like what that translates to in terms of like what you should be doing with your portfolio, or maybe not what you should be doing, but what we're doing and what you might want to consider.
Well said. Yeah.
As an option for yourself.
Yeah. So within crypto, like, first of all, I think crypto just goes higher, led by Bitcoin going higher. You know, Bitcoin, I imagine over the next 2 years goes back to an all-time high. You know, ETH will also perform very well. You know, maybe there's like relativism going on where people say like, oh, well, ETH shitty trade, even though, like, you know, I just said that ETH was up 165% for me. I'm happy with that. But, you know, what are the best narratives within crypto if crypto is pumping? You know, I can't be certain. I don't know. But some narratives that sound good to me are sort of like higher beta ETH adjacent things like Arbitrum, Optimism, Lido. You mentioned all those. I think another narrative that's being thrown around is the parallelized EVM narrative.
Yes, Sui. Sui's parallelized, right? But Say for sure.
Say Monad,
which doesn't exist yet, right? It's a potential airdrop thing.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting narrative.
Mm-hmm. Can't really buy Monad. You can buy Say.
And Say's pumping, right?
Say has been one of the strongest coins in existence, you know, for basically its whole existence. I mean, the chart looks kind of redonkulous.
There we go.
Oh my God. Yeah, this is. I'm not gonna lie to you. I have fucked this trade up very badly. I've been in this since like the breakout of like 55 cents or so. I've actually not made that much, just because I got scammed. I got scammed so hard on that little wick there.
That wick got you?
Oh, yeah, God. That wick, which doesn't exist on Binance, I might add. Thank you, Bybit. But yeah, Say it's not the type of thing that you don't usually want to fade these charts. It's not like oh yeah, I'm gonna sell because it's up so much. At a certain point, these narratives do get a little played out. You get caught on the wrong side, but like for the most part, I think you can just kind of just long these things and just keep assuming that they're going to go up. And I don't know, seems like a pretty good narrative. I want to definitely allocate a little more to it. I haven't looked at the Sui chart, to be honest. What does that look like? Pretty good. Also pretty good. It's like a less extreme version of Say. Edmund's he's pretty stoked on Say in the chat here. Say is everything you could want, built on Cosmos with parallelized transactions and EVM compatible.
It's a pretty compelling narrative.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. Like maybe this is just me being jaded from being in, through so many cycles, but I just hear all this stuff, and I just hear like the Charlie Brown's teacher, it's just like, it's just like, it's 99% of it is always noise. There's always somebody with some bag or like ulterior motive, and you get like, you keep like hopping. You go, oh my god, I missed the game. You go, oh my god, they're paralyzed. I hate that word. Parallelized. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Parallelized EVMs and Solana, and you just jump and jump and jump, and it's just like it's like exhausting, and most of it doesn't pan out, and it's very hard to kind of catch these things at the right time and sort of sell them well. And it feels like everybody on Twitter is making money, even though they're not, and they're just scamming you, and posting hindsight charts and everything. But it's painful to go through as an investor, for sure. So I'm trying to stick like a little bit higher level for next year. I totally agree with you that ETH beta does like super, super well. Less convinced on ETH, but I think that, yeah, like Arbitrum and OP for sure. Matic, I'm like open to the idea that Matic could do something. It's been a bit of a whipping boy for the whole bear market, to be honest. It's been a fun coin to short, more so than anything, but might have it stay in the sun. They're building stuff over there. I really like Lido. I think the Lido ETH chart, I've been harping on the Lido ETH chart for a while. I haven't looked at it for a bit, but I think it's, yeah. Oop, yep.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a little breakout there. Don't mind my lines. Yeah, so that thing is going up only. The ETH charts are really interesting to look at. Like our ETH is also a pretty. That's not the right chart. What is that? Save me, Binance.
Jeez.
All right, yeah. So it's like, what do you want to own? Do you want to own ETH or this thing?
Right.
It's basically ETH. It's a really hard chart to.
Does Optimism
to fade.
Look like that relative to ETH?
Yeah, it's basically the same, I think. Why TradingView? Are you doing this to me? There we go. Yeah. So
okay, same.
Yeah. So both Arbitrum and Optimism are in price discovery versus ETH. Like maybe ETH has this kind of ETF catch-up trade next year, and it kind of sucks a lot of the attention and money, like a bit of a black hole for a bit. Definitely possible. DeFi summer is still very much in my mind, right? There was a time, for those of you who were around, remember this, like everybody was like, DeFi coins, it's just all about DeFi. Why even own ETH when you can use DeFi? It's basically high beta ETH. It's just like the same stuff happens over and over again. And these things burn so hot, so fast for months. And you're like, there is no way these things could ever go down. There's no way I should buy anything else. And they were like dead before most stuff in the cycle ever pumped. And you had stuff like Maker just go down only for like 27 years straight. Even though it was only 2 years, it was like unbelievable. Like chart's never been as down bad. Same thing with like Link. Link completely just.
But they all had their time in the sun relative to ETH.
They burned too bright, too fast, too soon.
Too bright, too fast, too soon. I feel like ETH is going to have its resurgence, and I want to ask you if you have sort of like a year-end prediction for ETH price, maybe a range.
I hate price predictions because it's literally just people pulling something out of their ass.
Sure, but like pull something.
I've said that if things go really well for everything in the bull, like I think ETH can actually go beyond 20K. I suspect it disappoints to the downside for people, but that some of this other stuff does like way better than people may have hoped or might think.
Yeah, particularly if I'm thinking like year end 2024. That's not that long of a time horizon to get to 20K, so I don't think that's really in the cards.
I don't think that's happening I don't think so.
But I'm
I
like,
don't think so.
I put my range like with pretty high confidence, 4 to 6K. Like I feel very good about that.
4 to 6K. I mean, yeah, way to go out on a limb there, buddy.
But I mean, like that's not bad returns. Like I feel like everyone
Let's go buy some T-bills.
Everyone looks at that like, oh, lame. But it's
4
like,
to 8K.
imagine you just like double your net wealth like in a year. Like that's pretty fucking good.
If I was gonna like kind of extension this thing out, I would target like 9,500 and 14K.
Year
Those
end.
two targets.
Year end 24.
I don't know how long that takes. I'm just saying like this current trend.
Yeah, but I'm trying to talk about year end.
All right, fine. I'll just pull a number out of my ass. 87,000 year end. Stamp it.
I hope you're right.
I'm just more concerned with the relative performance where things ultimately go as opposed to year end. I know we got to do it for the clicks, man.
But I also feel like the relative performance game, while important, is secondary to absolute performance. Like your net wealth going higher is still good regardless. Like
I kind of agree, but I also mostly disagree. Like to me, it's so. I don't want to say this; it's going to age so badly. But to me, it's so obvious that everything is going so much higher, right? The question, oh God, why did I say that?
Yeah, you just fucked it.
The question to me is entirely like a relative thing. Like I'm just thinking all on a relative basis. Okay, like I think I'm very bullish on Bitcoin this cycle. But does that mean I should own Bitcoin? Does that mean I should own levered Bitcoin? Do I just baby lever Bitcoin? Do I buy BRC20 tokens? Do I just buy ordinals because I'm kind of bullish on the fees narrative changing? Or do I buy miners, right? It seems like one of these catalysts like has to kind of be the thing that makes it go. And if that makes it go, then I guess Bitcoin has two catalysts. It's like sort of institutional adoption and its fees. And I think you can play the fees narrative. Actually, there's three things there. Let's take a step back. So Bitcoin's obviously got institutional adoption, ETF, permanent DCA into the market. Yeah, we got that. All those things are good. How do you get exposure to that? Well, you buy Bitcoin, obviously.
Yep.
Or but basically anything you buy gets exposure to that narrative, right? So anything Bitcoin related is probably going to do really, really well. Miners will do well, but they're like a little dependent on the second narrative, which is like fees. Now, if Bitcoin does really, really well and price goes up, but there's no fee market, miners don't do as well. They'll still do well, but they won't do quite as well, probably. You look like you have a...
I think you're kind of missing... I think you're missing something here.
What am I missing?
Well, I'm thinking about it in terms of beta, right? Like, so beta is like how something performs relative to another. Mm-hmm. But like what you're talking about is like a structural beta. Like, I don't think that there's like a structure that exists that like makes ordinals or BRC20s move higher just because Bitcoin price is going higher. I don't think there's like a structural reason why Arbitrum and Optimism have to go higher just because ETH price goes higher. But I think with the miners, they actually do have a higher beta because they are A, owning Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and B, producing Bitcoin. So there is a higher beta exposure to the miners sort of like structurally versus the other ones. You're kind of just hoping.
I totally agree. What I'm saying is that miners have two ways to win. The first way to win is the same way Bitcoin wins, which is number go up. Miners hold Bitcoin on their balance sheets, and there's this sort of like convexity to that. And they go way, 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 way up when Bitcoin goes up, and then they go to zero when Bitcoin goes down a little bit. So there's that, right? But then you have this other thing that is totally independent, which is the emergent fee market on Bitcoin.
Right.
And this is, I think, like maybe one of the things that Wall Street just doesn't get.
They're not on this at all.
I think there is something to the idea that Wall Street doesn't get things, right? Because like we were all sitting here all year like, hello, Coinbase. Coin, it's pretty good. It's pretty good stock. It's pretty good stock. Like it's basically priced to literally go to zero at this point. Like, hello, doesn't anybody understand anything? And nobody did. But then there was this like ignition point, and then it's one of the best performing stocks of the entire year. Boom. So I feel like once there is this like propagation of the Bitcoin fee narrative, and like to me it feels like it's like everywhere now, but that's just because I think I'm in like the most inner sort of like nerdy crypto circles,
Right.
and like that's the thing people are now talking about, but it hasn't propagated out yet. Like I think you're still early to that narrative. So the idea that like ordinals is going to kind of basically make fees go through the roof on Bitcoin, it already has, right? But that this is a continued thing. And when I looked at Bitcoin NFTs at first I was sort of bearish them, right? I thought the concept was good. I thought it was like, oh, it's kind of like it's like, you know, the crypto punk thing. But like, well, what I thought is that like, well, but like Ethereum has a culture for this and Bitcoin doesn't. And I was totally wrong. Now, Bitcoin also has a culture that definitely does not like this, right? And they're actively trying to destroy it. But it actually does have a very NFT kind of culture to it. And those people are minting NFTs and they are trading them and they're generating a fuck ton of fees. And now the miners have this like thing that people didn't even think existed before that can like juice their revenues on top of the price appreciation, which is probably going to be more than the street is currently pricing in.
I completely agree with you.
Double
And
whammy.
all you're doing is like really just validating this thesis that I had that Bitcoin miners are going to outperform all of it, I think. And I think you're dead on with like the way that Wall Street thinks. Like they don't understand this stuff. I'm putting on my Wall Street hat right now. And I'm also of this mindset that here's how like a traditional investor thinks quite often. It's like, yeah, you like Bitcoin's price going higher, but then you don't want to chase Bitcoin's price going higher. And then you also start to think about the infrastructure layers, and you start to think about, okay, so what are the businesses around Bitcoin? Okay, these miners. You start to think about like, you know, who's selling the picks and shovels to this industry, you know, as like a Wall Streeter is going to think that this is just yet another flash in the pan, but let's invest in a real business that's servicing this flash in the pan. I feel like miners is the answer.
Yeah, I mean we've talked about miners a lot, obviously. So forgive us for laboring this point, but you know I think we have some new thoughts on this, and I think you and I both agree that this is one of the best trades of 2024 potentially, because it's tied to Bitcoin. It's tied to this thing that I think is such a rock solid lock in the realm of crypto, in which nothing is a lock, but it's about as much of a lock as you get in crypto. The idea that Bitcoin is now going to be successful, given that it has an ETF and fee markets, right? It seems like a pretty good trade. Marathon is $26 right now. It's more than a 3x just to go to its prior local high. Like it's still like an 8x or a 7x from its high the cycle before that. There's a lot of room for these things to move, and this is Mara. This is like the biggest one, and I think we've been looking at some like interesting other plays. Like I have a few things I've added to my portfolio.
You got some new ones.
Yeah, so I added Wolf, TerraWolf. So I'm assuming this company did something before Bitcoin mining and then pivoted.
I never looked into
It's got a
TerraWolf
chart
before.
that goes to the 90s. So
Oh.
I'm assuming they did the great pivot, and yeah, they probably pulled like a riot where somebody bought out the company or something and then pivoted it in April 2020, because then it just moons and then dies. But yeah, this thing hit $43 last cycle, currently trading at $2.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of upside here.
There's no guarantee, obviously, that it goes back to all-time highs, but like there is so much room to the upside in some of these things. I like the narrative for TerraWolf. The kind of they're like mining Bitcoin with like nuclear energy. It's sort of like a green mining operation. The downside with TerraWolf, and like this is some of the nuance with the miners. It's sort of like, well, what's their cost to mine Bitcoin, but also like what are they doing with their Bitcoin? Are they hodling?
Right, because a lot of them sell the Bitcoin that they mine just to keep their operation running.
Yeah, and Wolf is not a hodler. Wolf is dumping.
Yeah.
They're dumping. But in spite of that, like I think that at a particular Bitcoin price, like their profitability metrics, they just go off the charts, right? And that revenue alone is going to moon this thing, if that happens. I also have a Cypher. Have you looked into Cypher at all?
Oh yeah, I bought this one.
Yeah, Cypher looks pretty good from a chart perspective to me. Like I would love for it to dip a little more into this. You get kind of like it's basically a monthly order block, and a pretty large one, from 240 to 420 or so. But if this thing kind of gets a retrace into kind of the 50% of that zone is an area I like to buy, like 330 or so, which is definitely doable from here if we get a little more FUD. Again, like the high of last cycle, $15. Like basically all of these things have insane potential convexity to the upside. And then if you are like a degen, like we are, you're what's that like exhibit meme where it's like, hey man, I heard you like your hey man, I heard you like some convexity with your convexity. Like that's kind of what we're doing here, right?
By buying options on it.
Yeah, we're buying like out of the money options on the super high beta thing, which I think is a really funny, but also potentially like wildly profitable thing to do with like a percentage of your portfolio. Like this is probably 10 to 20% of my Bitcoin holdings is just like, all right, minor convexity, go. Like, I'm not saying it should be your whole exposure, but like it could double the amount of like Bitcoin you end up with at the end of the cycle just by giving it that little kind of chunk.
So I'm even willing to go much higher on the allocation to the miners than 10 to 20%.
What are you thinking?
100?
maybe you're right. I was already kind of a little bitch with this trade before I just booked a paltry 7x on my so you guys sent it.
So I try not to overthink the miner trade too much. Like there's so many publicly traded miners and they're all pretty much the same. They're playing the same game. There's a little bit of nuance, like you said, some hold more, some dump more. This one I liked because it was kind of Goldilocks zone for me. It's like it holds a lot of Bitcoin and it also produces cheap.
Cypher?
Yeah, Cypher holds a lot of Bitcoin and produces cheap Bitcoin. So it's like from a business standpoint, it's actually like businessing well.
Good
a lot
chart.
of these don't.
Good chart.
It's got a good chart by the sounds of it. There's another one that you brought up, Hut.
Yes. So Hut is another one I bought today. So today I basically been building a portfolio. I've got Hut, I've got Mara, I've got Wolf, I've got Cypher. There's maybe one other I'm forgetting about off the top of my head. And I just kind of have them broken down like on a market cap basis. Yeah. I don't know how you feel about that, but
fine.
That's kind of what I did. Some people like the square root of the market cap thing. If you're a little more,
I don't try to overthink this stuff,
but that's a kind of interesting way to do it. But yeah, Hut. I don't know a ton about Hut other than the chart. The chart to me looks really, really good because it hasn't really. It to me, it's going to break out. Like if like mining happens, it's going to break out. It's doing this thing right now where it's had a kind of a big move up from a weekly order block, and I love. Like a huge chunk of my trading system is just like market structure break on the weekly, buy retrace into weekly order block. And
yeah,
that's kind of it. It's like the zone that gave you the pump on the weekly, it goes back into the zone, you buy it.
Yeah, I think
to sort of oversimplify it, but that's basically what we've got here. We've got a retest of the zone.
I like it. I'm just reluctant because I'm so bearish on January, but you do have to buy at some point, and this looks like a pretty reasonable time to buy, dipping back into that magic rectangle
there. But what I like about these setups is that like I can have an invalidation, right? Like if this thing goes below like 780 or so, like closes below 780, there's some problems on the chart. By the way, this chart is also just literally the Coinbase chart. Wait, hold on. Like I've seen this chart before. Wait, how do I add a chart? I should know how to do this. There we go. Let's do this. What I want. Yeah, new price.
Wow.
Yeah. So there you go.
Oh, it's just gonna catch up.
Right. That's what has to happen, right? That's how it works, right? Yeah. Uncanny.
No, I like the chart. I like the chart. I like this hut in particular, just because right before we got on the pod, I looked it up. They hold the second most Bitcoin on their balance sheet of all the miners, and I kind of feel like that. You know, these things are going to move based on the price of Bitcoin, but when the price of Bitcoin goes higher, what like really sends, I think what we're going to find is that it's the miners that hold the most Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And these guys hold the second most after Mara. So they're hodlers.
Oh, another interesting thing about HUT, it is the most heavily shorted Bitcoin stock.
That's interesting. Okay.
36% of the float, I think.
Okay, so, man.
Possibly why price is not pumping at the moment. Gamma squeeze?
Man, I guess I got to get on this. So there's a short that I entered today that's completely unrelated to miners, but it is related to this conversation that you just brought up, which is like short percentage of float.
Mm-hmm.
QuantumScape, QS. Can you pull up this chart?
QS.
This is like a battery company for automobiles that for EVs that we've discussed in the past. It had a big move today. It went up 50% today.
Damn. It's a big pump.
And it's done this in the past.
Less impressive on the weekly. There we go.
Yeah, it's done this in the past several times, and every time you sell it because this thing doesn't even have a product. It doesn't have a product. It has never generated $1 of sales. Like it won't have a product until like 2026 at the earliest. It just came out with like some news, and this is an easy sell. But I think this is kind of instructive in a way when we're talking about short interest, because this thing only had 15% of float short, but it's a very like low volume stock. So one way to look at short interest is like short shares that are short against the outstanding shares or the float. Another way to look at it is shares that are short against daily volume, and that's called it's called, like, you call it days. It's like days to close is the way you look at that.
Days to close.
So days to close means like how many days based on normal volume would it take for the shorts to close their position. So when I look at like a short interest, sometimes I'm looking at the days to close, and this was a really, really high days to close. So anytime something gets like above 5, that to me looks squeezy. This was at like a 10 days to close. And what you saw today, I think, was that squeeze happening. It was just like a really high ratio of short compared to daily volume. So I think people got squeezed, and then this thing will just sort of subside again, like it always does.
It's interesting. So a couple things jump out to me here. One, if I were a betting man, I would actually bet this goes higher. I would bet it goes over 1150.
Okay.
Which is a decent clip from here. What was that? We're at like 930 right now. Like this is actually a setup I use. Like I look for these sorts of zones that are like an up move that actually just reverses and just fails like really hard the other way. Because that's typically like an area of supply that gave you like a significant structural move. And when that is tested for the first time, often at the 50% level, there's a very high failure rate. So like one type of setup I take when I'm trading is to take a higher time frame zone like this. Like say maybe it's like that on like the 4-hour chart or like the daily chart. and then I'll make like a 15 or a 5-minute trade on it. Just assuming that that higher time frame is just going to dominate it, at least for like one. I just need one leg, right? And you can see that's what it did. That's what it did previously. Right there, right? It wicked above the 50% and then like hard sell off. Yeah, it's like interesting. It's interesting. What I'm actually trying to look at some of the levels here. Is this a double top or did it break this? Sketch. It kind of wicked above, but didn't close above. Okay. Yeah, this is just a range right now also. So you could also look at this as like a range play at like a higher, like an even higher time frame.
Yeah. So what's the top of that? What's that double top level? I can't see from here.
That is about 1380 or so.
Okay. So like the strategy that I really like on this is just selling out of the money calls because the premiums are really fucking high. Volatility's high, implied volatility's high. Sell out of the money calls.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Yeah, you can kind of treat these ranges like if something's range bound like this and it gets up to like this 0.5 level would be like the 71st percentile of the range within a zone that it's also likely to go down. So you're in like a premium of the range in a zone that's likely to give you a reaction to the downside. It's kind of an interesting spot to sell calls, especially if volatility is spiking, because you're sort of like it's almost like a mean reversion play, right? You could think of a range as like a high, a low, and an average price. Price is like really deviating from that average. It tends to revert. That's kind of the whole principle of ranges. So,
and what do you got? What level is that on like the mid range there that you highlighted?
So the mid range of this whole range, we're actually below it right now. So 962.
Uh-huh.
So,
and what was that?
Working for you?
Was like 11 something.
1150, where
Okay.
I said I suspect it.
Yeah.
It might hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
that's interesting. What's kind of mildly scary about this chart is that you could also say it's double bottoming.
And he's just sending now.
So this is where you could potentially get your face ripped off. Like if this recent low was like a lot lower or like it significant like a lower close than this previous low in early January, it might be like, oh, lower low on the super high time frame. I'm not really worried about it taking that low, but then also like taking the high above. But if you have like these structures, like these can sometimes be like bottoming structures, and I don't want you getting into one of these like kind of trash things that just ends up uber ripping because
this
it's
is
like a stupid year.
This is kind of like a stock that you can dream on as well. It doesn't have a product, but like the product that it's developing is like a world changer. It's like
sodium battery.
The sodium battery, solid state
like
like holds its charge much better. Charges instantly, would like change the landscape of transportation. Like it would be fucking epic if they can execute on the dream.
Cool. All right. While we're in TradFi land, let's wrap the bulk of this episode with we need to have a callback to what do you call these drugs?
GLP-1s.
GLP-1s. Yeah, we've been doing a lot with those, saying like Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, very bullish. We made a WW trade on the program that got taken out back behind the woodshed and shot today.
Wrecked.
WW had a bad day. Bit of a bad day. Didn't break structure yet, but a bit of a bad day. Absolutely nuked, and it nuked because Eli Lilly announced something substantial.
Yeah, they announced they're going to basically compete in the same exact space. They're going direct to consumer, issuing prescriptions on these GLP-1s themselves, which was like WW's sort of that was their play.
Yeah,
that was their play, and so. Couple things. I'm positioned on this. One, like I bought some leap calls that were really fucking cheap, and
we got a good move on this. Like this thing moved like 50%.
Yeah, and
from our entry,
and I didn't sell.
I didn't sell anything.
Yeah, I didn't sell anything. But another
lesson in that.
But there's another thing that I did was I sold puts at $7.
Ooh.
So I'm gonna be owning a lot of common shares at the end of the week too.
No, he's selling the puts on the mega Head and Shoulders in the making.
Yeah. So I sold puts here. So I'm gonna be owning common.
Bro, this thing's going to $3 if it breaks, I think.
Okay. Well,
I might if you get a little bounce out of here, like back to $7 or $8 or so, I might consider hedging that out. I don't know.
I don't know, because
look, the other thing here is like this is also the point of maximum opportunity. You've just got to retrace into the critical area. It hasn't broken it. Like it hasn't broken it.
We're back in the rectangle.
We're back in the rectangle. We haven't broken the rectangle. You do see double bottoms in these zones before you get like huge moves into new highs sometimes, right? So it'd be interesting to see what happens here. Like if we see this news, it's all but dead. It's nuked. But for some reason, it doesn't go lower. I don't know. Maybe there's something else in the works here. Maybe WW's got something up their sleeves. Maybe Eli Lilly didn't do something that the market thought was. I don't know. But like sometimes these are the points where you also get like really, really mega trades in.
So I was talking to Carne Asada Chris offline about this, and I think he's like more heavily allocated, and so it might be Cope, but he was basically suggesting that he's like, listen, this is like a consumer play, right? And like no consumer knows what the fuck Eli Lilly is. So are they going to buy direct from Eli Lilly, or are they going to like buy Weight Watchers? Because everyone knows what that is. Everyone knows who Oprah is. And, you know, I kind of have this belief that if Eli Lilly gets into this game and makes it a little more normal for like, you know, buying direct is sort of the way that you get these prescriptions. Like maybe that's a rising tide lifts all boats situation. Maybe it's Cope. I don't know. But I'm not really.
Somebody agrees with Chris. Somebody bought the mid range of the rectangle hard and sent it up 6% on that dip. Yeah, I'm curious if this zone holds. I'm not going to sell the position I have until we lose the area. If we lose the area, I'm out. But yeah, it's not generally bullish when you see this.
I mean, like my positioning is such that I'm like so much more long on Novo and Lilly that I don't actually care. And
Lilly is, you know, the other side of this, you know, trade is that you maybe have like an interesting long here on Lilly, you know, where you could put your money instead. Almost, it looked like it wanted to break out today, but did not. We actually got a little failure.
What about Novo? I feel like that broke out.
I haven't looked at Novo in a bit. I would love to buy Lilly here, like 580 or so.
You probably get it if we have this January thing that I'm expecting, but
like this is kind of the setup of dreams if we get it. Like this is what I like to see, right? This kind of back into the zone, maybe consolidate a little, maybe fake out lower, little signs of bullish structure, and then you go. That's the sweet spot. I will be looking out for that.
Do Novo though.
Let's look at Novo. I mean, I feel like every time I look at this chart, I just laugh at how up only it is. I haven't looked at it in a bit.
This is the one that I own the most of.
That's not the run. I gotta go Novo.
NVO.
NVO. That's right. Yeah. I mean, breakout. We're good. This thing is, I don't know. I don't know why I don't own more of this stupid thing. I've been talking about how good it looks for months at this point.
Yeah, your advice to me when I asked, what do I look for in entry? And you just say, you click the button that says buy.
Yeah, I pulled up this chart and I was just like, just buy it immediately. And we're up like 20% since then. So good on me. Good on me for that. But yeah, when life gives you lemons, you sometimes sell them and buy oranges.
Yeah,
with the proceeds.
Yeah, I'm not mad at it.
In this instance, possibly, you know, if WW doesn't work out, we're just rotating into Lilly. Yeah, and we're gonna go with it. I didn't see the setup on Lilly before, but like I see the setup now. I like it if we get it. Let me Let me check the chat real quick to see if anybody asked anything of us. Calcium asked about Lily. Got you. I got you, buddy. Nothing too crazy. All right. Well, we've been going for a while, so I think we'll basically wrap that here. I think we kind of went a little all over the place as per usual that episode, but I think 2024 we're very bullish on ETH beta. Very bullish on Bitcoin beta.
Yeah.
The year of the ETH and Bitcoin beta. We like the miners. We like the L2s. We like the Lido. And I also like we didn't talk about it a lot, but I like the BRC20s and I like the ordinals. And I also like the Bitcoin layer 2s, I think is like another interesting thing. And it's a good thing. It's one of these things where it's like smart to buy it if you're like a heavy ETH bag holder. You got to buy some Solana.
Yeah.
You got to buy the freaking Celestias, even if you don't think they do anything, and you got to buy some of these like Bitcoin, because like if you're wrong, or if the market thinks you're wrong for 2 years, and maybe you're not wrong ultimately, but like the whole cycle passes you by and you get wrecked. That's not fun either.
Well, I'm gonna have my cannon ready to fire in like late January, so let's keep our eyes peeled for.
I hope it's that easy for you. I hope it is. I'm just trying to be like humble. I kind of don't know what's going to happen on I trade on very short time horizons and very long time horizons. This like 2-3 week stuff is like good luck to me. So I'm just trying to knock it over my skis, take some profits, keep some cash. If stuff goes up, I'm happy. If stuff goes down, I'm long-term bullish, happy to buy some stuff with cash. If we get nuked really, really bad, I run out of cash, well, then the play is to take some of the ETH and take some of the Bitcoin and rotate some of that into the
higher beta.
So I keep having like the bullets in the chamber, If we run out of bullets, there's always another one back there. Until it all goes to zero, and then then this podcast needs to get profitable really fast.
Well, I'm excited to see how it all plays out,
Yeah,
man. This is good stuff.
I'm excited to see what happens with your short. We got to remember to check in on that in a week or two. I'll be curious to recap that. Thanks to everybody for joining us today. Reminder, if you're listening, to subscribe on the new Irresponsibly Long YouTube at Irresponsibly Long Pod. Join us in the Alfalfa Discord. We still got all links for this pod at alfalfapod.com for the Discord. You can also find my Twitter, Eric's Twitter. I don't know if Eric tweets things, but I tweet things.
Yeah, follow Steven.
It's mostly shit posting, but there's some good nuggets buried in there occasionally, useful for you guys. So, or just come to the Discord and yell at me for my bad calls, whatever. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a great start to your new year. I hope the rest of the year is amazing for you. We will see you back here next week. Have a lovely evening, gents.
Later, guys.
And ending stream now. Well done.